importantly, is there existence, proof, is there evidence for the existence of God? And I'll spend as little time framing that question as possible. Just to go over the order of events. Well, first, this is the CAC, and this is the Secular Student Association. First, we'll have opening statements. 6 minutes for the affirmative. CAC is arguing the affirmative. 7 minutes for the negative, and then rebuttals. 4 minutes for the affirmative, 6 minutes for the negative, and then a final rebuttal from the affirmative for 3 minutes. And then all have questions, depending on the opening statements on the different amount of questions. And the team that I asked the question to will have 3 minutes to answer or to respond to the question, and the other team will have 2 minutes to rebut the response. And then we'll have 2-minute closing statements, and then we'll open it up to audience questions. So without further ado, I would like to direct it over to CAC. Fitzgerald, essentially.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming, and also like to thank the Zingers Students Alliance for participating, for thanking Nash for moderating. The question of this debate asks, is there evidence for the existence of God in the world? We hold, as representatives of Christian Apologetics in Carolina, that the answer is unequivocally yes. Our goal in this debate is to show that there is solid evidence for the existence of God, and also that a purely naturalistic worldview is not consistent with what we observe in the known universe. To quickly define 2 important terms, when we talk about a naturalistic universe, we're talking about an atheistic, materialistic universe with no supreme being or supernatural element. When we talk about God, we're talking about an ultimate, all-powerful, all-knowing supreme being. In fact, we're going to argue that the universe itself is evidence for the existence of God. Let's observe the universe itself. We observe events happening all the time. Objects are in motion, organisms grow, die, decay, gravity attracts objects to each other. Each of these actions has a cause. Another attribute that we observe in the universe is that it's always expanding. It's also, because it's expanding, it's progressing towards a state of total entropy, a state that physicists call the heat death, in which all energy will be expended, matter will reach a temperature of absolute 0, and matter will stop moving. Since the universe is expanding, it cannot be infinitely old. Otherwise, it would have reached maximum entropy an infinite amount of time ago. Rather, the universe is both temporally and spatially finite. That is, it has both a definite beginning and a finite area of space. If the universe and all that is in it, space, time, matter, energy, had a definite beginning, what caused it? This event cannot have caused itself. After all, that would require it to exist prior to its own existence in order to cause itself. It was created by something outside the universe, such as breaking off from another universe, or some other natural, heretofore undiscovered natural phenomena. It merely raises the question of what caused the next universe or natural phenomena. In order to maintain a completely naturalistic and materialistic worldview, one must posit an endless regression of causes and effects. But this idea runs into its own set of problems, where the existence in reality of any sort of actual infinite is a logical impossibility. Although infinity is valid as an abstract mathematical concept, for any infinite to exist in the finite world causes a series of logical contradictions. For example, let us imagine a library with an infinite number of books. Let's imagine each book has a number. There are an infinite amount of numbers, so each book has its own number. If we loan out all the odd books, we have just loaned out an infinite number of books. Yet, we've only loaned out half the books in the library, yet the library still has as many books as before we took out half its books. The library only makes sense if we have a finite amount of books and we keep adding books to the library. It doesn't make sense as an infinite library simply because the concept of an actual infinite does not make sense when applied into the finite natural world. Since the universe is finite and has a beginning, it cannot be a product of an endless series of cause and events. It must have a cause, which is not part of a naturalistic system. The most reasonable explanation is that the universe was created by an ultimate being, neither caused nor finite, yet not needed to be caused or finite because he is not part of the finite naturalistic system. God, in the words of William Lane Craig, transcends and creates the entire realm of finite reality.
Yes. I would like to go back to the Big Bang. Physicists call singularity, T equals 0. As of Paul Davies notes, a singularity represents the outer limits of the natural universe. What Stephen Hawking calls the principle of ignorance. The singularity is the ultimate unknowable and should be devoid of information. Anything that emerges from singularity should be random and chaotic, unless there was some cause beyond the power of physical science to discern, which made it predictable and orderly instead. Davies calls the moment of singularity the nearest thing that science has to a supernatural agent, and it is precisely here that we claim to find it. Physics cannot tell us what happened in the moment of singularity. Any hypothesis then about it has to be based on the universe that resulted from it. So what sort of universe did result? What happened in the first blank time after the Big Bang? The fundamental laws of physics were established. Science cannot tell us why this particular set was created, but it has told us that our particular set is highly unlikely given the precarious balance of forces which have to be in place at the beginning to allow it. So what kind of laws are these? They exhibit, within a wide range, a fundamental underlying regularity. The universe has remarkable uniformity. Scientists have used empirical laws which seem to be followed by the whole of nature, discovering deeper laws which give rise to these empirical laws in the night. Phenomena which one thought to be unrelated are now known to be intimately connected in one system that is not only ordered but elegant. And the structure and regularity of this universe, considering that it emerged from the moment of singularity, should have generated randomness and chaos, is astonishing. Equally astonishing is the existence of life within this universe, which took another set of empirically balanced forces to allow life to begin. We call these anthropic coincidences. As scientists have looked further, they have discovered more and more of these facts about the universe and its laws, which permit our existence only within the narrowest range of possibilities. Finally, we come not to the existence just of life, but of human life, of our own existence. And here the reductionism, which was so successful at explaining biology.
Finish the thought. Yeah, finish the thought, yeah.
Sure. We find this phenomenon difficult to explain, were it not for the fact that it fit exactly into the Christian expectation of the universe. A rational universe contained rational beings, presumably both of which were created by a rational creator.
Great. So with that, we'll turn to the second instance. I'll just not move it up. Or make it loud enough to do.
Thanks again for everybody for coming. I'd like to start by pointing out that a supernatural explanation is something that should only be adopted once all natural explanations have been exhausted. Hundreds of years ago, rainbows were definitive proof of all. How could all of those colors simply know to organize themselves in such a fashion? And I'm not being pejorative about that. It's simply an example of why supernatural explanation should be safe for life. Every other mechanism is exhausted. I'd also like to point out something called the null hypothesis. I'm not sure if many of you guys have a background in science or anything like that, but you all use it every day in your lives. You just might not know the term for it. Let's say that I am trying to convince you that this drug will cure AIDS or something like that. The default position that you take is that no, it won't. So show me evidence that it will. And that's kind of our position here in the sense of there's an asymmetrical, this argument is not something that's symmetrical. The conditions for victory are not things which are symmetrical. We have the default position of there is no God, what exists is simply natural. Show us evidence, such as in the title of the debate, for its existence. Could God exist? Absolutely. But the number of things that could exist are pretty much infinite. There could be an undetectable teapot orbiting around Mars. I mean, there are a number of things which are unprovable. But it doesn't mean that they don't exist. And it also, at the same time, doesn't mean that simply because it can't be disproven, it does exist. I think that everybody in this room who doesn't currently believe in God would if we were provided with sufficient evidence. And I think that it's the sort of thing that this is your opportunity, not just to the audience, but to us as well. Show us evidence. That's what this debate is about, physical evidence. The default position, and this is something that isn't commonly seen in society, is that, that there is a God. Prove to me that there isn't. But as I've demonstrated earlier,